This is one of my earliest heroic deeds from when I first started. Young and dumb, I started this quest. HMT. It all started one night when my younger brother left his bicycle outside in the front yard overnight. The next morning, the family and I all found out that the bike had been stolen during the night. We reported it to the police, but all they did was fill out a report and tell us, "This kind of thing happens around here a lot. The thieves probably sold it for money to get drugs." Realizing that the police were going to be of no help or even useful at all, I decided to make my own private investigation by going to all our neighbors' houses and asking a few questions of my own. No one saw who had taken the bikes, but I did find out that the bike thefts had been happening quite frequently in the neighborhood here, and growing worse recently. After gathering the facts, I came to some conclusions. I figured it had to be someone nearby or even in the neighborhood itself, and that the only way to catch them was to set a trap. Using my own 10-speed bike as bait, I laid low in the cab of my 72 pickup and waited. I waited for hours, so it seemed more like years, reading a boring book by the streetlight to pass time. Just when I finished the book and was about to give up, thinking they weren't going to show up because either they knew I was there in the cab or they weren't even out that night, they finally showed up to take the bait. There was two of them. They looked to be in their early 20s or younger. One drove a big green pickup while the other had to jump out at the start of the block and snuck into yards to grab the bike along with a few other items and throw them into the back of the pickup. They didn't see me peering slightly over my dash as they grabbed my bike, and reaching the end of the block, the man doing the snatching threw my bike in the back of the truck and got into the pickup himself, and they began taking off. "I got them now," I said aloud, hissing it to myself as I patted the wooden baseball bat lying in the truck seat beside me. I waited until they were down the streets a little ways before I started my engine to slowly follow them in my truck, without even turning on the headlights. If they stopped, I'd quickly pull over to the curb and shut the engine off. They didn't seem to notice me there as they hit a few more places in the neighborhood before they finally pulled up to a house and knocked on the garage door. I stopped a little ways down the street and parked my truck on the side of the road. Sneaking down the street with the wooden baseball bat in tow, I got close enough to see the third man, who I instantly recognized as the local pawn shop owner downtown, where I usually went to buy music, tapes, and video games from, because they were so cheap. Now I knew why. It was probably because they were all stolen goods. "Oh man, this is deep," I thought, whispering to myself as I kept moving in on them. They still had no idea I was even there when I moved in for my strike on them, which told me that they'd been doing this for quite a while, and since they hadn't run into any trouble before, so they didn't expect to run into any trouble this night either. They were about to be caught reaching their hand one too many times into the cookie jar. I took out the first one while the other two were in the garage. I hit him in the back of the head with the bat while he was getting the bike out of the back of the green pickup truck. I was already moving on to the side of the house when he hit the ground unconscious without even knowing what had hit him, and letting the bike fall to the ground with a noisy clatter. I was already in position to strike again when the other man from the pickup came out and yelled, "Hey, stupid! You alright? We can't sell damaged goods, you know. Stupid?" That's when I struck, hitting him in the side of his head with the bat, sending him sprawling to the ground, also unconscious. But this time the third man saw me and yanked the garage door down. Before it even hit the ground, I was already throwing it back up and rushing in. The pawn shop owner was already reaching for a handgun that was sitting on a table beside a pocket cell phone and spinning around with it, leaving me no choice but to throw the bat like a spear as I rushed in towards him. "Heavy metal thunder! I screamed as I released the bat into the air with all the energy I had. The bat, instead of being a spear, went spinning sideways through the air and caught him in the side with enough force to knock him onto the floor against the wall and scattering yard tools everywhere. Meanwhile, the gun in his hand fired a shot into the roof and slid out of his grip to the other side of the garage across the floor, spinning as it went. Recovering before I could reach him, he grabbed a wood chopping axe from off the floor, which had been part of the yard tools that had scattered everywhere, and he stood using the axe as a cane to get to his feet. As he raised the axe up and swung wildly above my head, I ducked into a low spinning sweep kick to his legs and knocked him to the floor. This time, before he could recover, I knocked him out with a right fist in the left temple of his forehead. Afterwards, I found some rope in the garage and tied all three of them up together in the garage. Using the pawn shop owner's own pocket cellular phone, I called the police and told them that their bike thieves were captured and waiting for them. I found my brother's bike and then mine and threw them into the bed of my pickup. Also finding a can of black spray paint on a wall, I spray painted on the floor of the garage, "Heavy Metal Thunder was here." As I was leaving, the police showed up, sirens ablazing, not noticing me leaving. Someone must have reported the gunshots as well for them to get there that quick. The next day, the local newspaper's headline read, "Vigilante Stops Bike Theft Ring." The article also mentioned drugs being found on the premise, and the other stolen property was already being returned to those who had been robbed. I smiled to myself as I clipped out the article, and I thought to myself, "You know, big guy, this could be the start of something."